This one is another clip from a longer interview with Stephen and Emily. And one of the things about these two in particular that I find really interesting is they come from pretty standard or semi-traditional data backgrounds and data career ladders, and they've since found themselves in not what you would think of as the next step or the obvious narrative move, or at least not the one that folks might think of, who are currently working as analysts or data engineers or whatnot. And I really wanted to talk about that a little bit, this idea of sort of data jobs outside of the traditional data structure or outside of what we think of as like the traditional data journey. And I think as our field and sort of our career opportunities grow and become more complicated and nuanced, this kind of journey is going to become much more common. And they're both just really brilliant and really thoughtful about what it is and what it's meant for them. So here we go.
Are these positions you were like hired into, or are these positions that sort of grew around your particular skill set? Like what's the origin story there?
Yeah, Steven has a more interesting one. So
I do have a pretty good one here. So I started at Zapier because I cold emailed the CEO and said, I think you need a chief of staff or a business operations person. Here's what that means. Here's why it would be good for you. And here's why I would be good at it. And he emailed me back and essentially said, I don't think I need that, but I liked your email, so let's talk anyways. And as we talked, he realized that my background was really in data. And so I started on the data team, but he knew that this type of role was where I wanted to take my career. And so both my CEO and my manager at the time, the head of the data team, were both very good at feeding me projects that fit this vein, even when I was sitting on the data team.
Mm-hmm.
And as Zapier grew from around probably 50 or 75 people when I sent that first email to 200 to 250 to over 300, Wade came back around and sort of said, okay, now I see those problems that you were originally describing. Let's give it a shot, and officially moved me over into a role like this.
Cool.
yeah, the way I describe the transition is that data went from being my job to being something I used to do my job.
Mm-hmm.
And so we opened a chief of staff rec, and this is one of the roles that reports to the chief of staff. So we're still hiring a chief of staff,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been kind of doing it in the interim. And that's how my mindset has changed. And really, I've come to realize what a superpower data is,
Sure.
where you don't have to ask the data team for the thing. You can just like go write the SQL query yourself or go make the MR yourself. And it allows me to get what I need much more efficiently.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, similar vein, the way I position this, I actually just made the first hire to work in business operations other than myself. And so the way that we were talking about this through the interview process was that you should be the most data savvy person in the room when there's no data team member in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a high expectation that people can self-serve and do a lot of data in order to work in a hyper cross-functional role at a data forward organization like ours. But you don't necessarily have to have been qualified to write Python and R stuff that would get you a role on our data team.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And it sounds like y'all have found like a pretty significant amount of leverage and a significant amount of success kind of in these deeply cross-functional roles.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can. I was feeling like I was doing really well in the data team. I was really confident in what I was doing. I have opinions and a mindset on how things should be approached and problems to be solved. And I had like a bank of patterns that I could refer to whenever a problem came up. And transitioning from that to the role I'm in now, I don't have that bank of patterns anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every problem is new and it's creating a new pattern that I'm going to refer to in the future. But in the meantime, it's just hard and exciting and thrilling all at the same time.
Right.
I think objectively, yeah, I'm doing a good job. I can pull my own analysis and solve the problem. But even more exciting is that like the role itself is just so intriguing.
It sounds a little bit like having folks who are really data literate and sort of more than data literate, like data query like literate, outside of the data organization in some ways can reduce stress for people in the data organization,
Totally.
because it's not as though the work that you're doing didn't exist, right, before you were around to do it.
Yeah, we actually position this not just in my role, but some other places in the org. I would say one of the goals for our data team is actually to empower at least one power user inside of every organization at the company. And on the teams that have that, we see that person able to carry the 80% of data questions that are easily accessible, easily self-servable. And when those don't have to go through the data org, the entire company can operate much faster because the data org gets to sit on the questions that actually require a deeper level of sophistication or technical skill, or just thought processes. And so when you have those power users around the rest of the organization, it's extremely helpful for the data team.